The bride in the torn blue dress did not beg the Mormon wagon train to save her. She dropped into the mud beside the lead wagon, braced both hands under the split wheel, and shouted for somebody to get the child clear before the axle gave way. The Platte ran high and cold behind her. Oxen bawled against the yoke. A little boy in a straw hat was crouched beneath the wagon after a fallen tin cup, and the whole load was tipping toward him inch by inch. "Move him," the bride cried. A gray-bearded captain lunged first and yanked the child backward by his coat. The wheel sank deeper. The bride shoved her shoulder under the rim and held. Mud streaked the blue silk at her waist. One sleeve had been torn away. There was blood at the corner of her mouth, dry once and broken open again. Before we go further, settle in wherever this story finds you tonight, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We always like knowing who is on the trail with us. Now come back to the riverbank, because the next few minutes changed everything. Captain Hyrum Cade barked for wedges and a jack. Men ran. Women pulled children back. Only when the weight was lifted did the bride sit in the mud and breathe. "Name," Kate said. She pushed a damp strand of hair out of her face. She was not young in the way foolish men prized youth. Maybe 30, maybe a little past. Broad through the shoulders, strong through the wrists. A woman built by work instead of admiration. "Lydia Quill," she said. "That axle's been patched with green wood. If you've got hickory and grease, I can mend it proper. After that, if you still want me gone, I'll go." Nobody missed what she did not say. She did not say where she had come from. She did not say why her veil hung in ribbons from one hand. She did not say why she kept glancing east as though the horizon itself might ride up armed. Cade looked her over with the hard caution of a man responsible for 63 souls. "We do not gather strays lightly," he said. Lydia nodded toward the wheel. "Then don't gather me lightly. Gather me because your wagon won't make sweet water on that repair. The left trace chain is thinning at the hook, and whoever sold you this axle knew it would fail once the weather turned." Silence followed that. The men looked at the wheel. Gideon looked at Lydia. She was right. Sister Verity Snow stepped down from the nearest wagon. She was 50 or near enough, broad-hipped, iron-backed, with a knife hanging from her apron and flour on one sleeve. "Get her up first," Verity said. "Questions can wait till she eats." Cade let out a slow breath. 2 hours, he said. Lydia rose without taking the hand Verity offered. Pride came off her like heat from a cook stove. Gideon brought tools before he had decided whether he trusted her. She stripped the rotten patch from the axle, cut new wood, packed grease under the iron, and reset the repair with quick, exact movements. "Wood tells the truth," she murmured. "It's people that mostly lie." By noon the wagon sat sounder than before. Children drifted closer. Somebody handed Lydia coffee. Then 3 riders appeared on the far rise, coming hard from the east. Every face in camp turned. Lydia's did more than turn. It emptied. Not pale exactly. Hollow. The way a face goes when fear has already happened once and knows the road back. "If they ask," she said quietly, "you never saw me." Gideon stood beside her. "Who are they?" She looked at him, measuring. "Men sent by Asa Bell. He was meant to marry me this morning." The words landed like cold water. Captain Cade stepped forward. "Did the man force you?" Lydia reached into the torn hem of her dress and pulled out a packet wrapped in oilcloth. "He bought my father's debts after my father died. The town called it kindness. He meant to call it marriage by noon." She held up the packet. "These are his ledgers. Changed figures. Stolen acreages. Notes altered after the signing. Widows ruined. Teamsters robbed. If he gets them back, he'll own half the river towns by summer." The riders were close enough now to show rifles. The lead rider called out, "We seek a woman in blue silk. She's stolen property and private papers. Hand her over and we'll leave in peace." There was an easy road then. Everybody saw it. Return her. Keep the company clean. Move west and let the world do what it did to women without protectors. Verity Snow came and stood shoulder to shoulder with Lydia. "No decent soul calls a woman property in front of me and leaves believing it," she said. Captain Cade handed the packet back to Lydia. "Sister Snow, take Miss Quill to your wagon. Brother Hale, burn whatever paper binds her to that man. If trouble wants her, it'll have to come through us." The rider swore. Cade did not so much as blink. Gideon took the folded marriage license from Lydia's shaking hand. The seal was still bright. He held it to the cook fire until Asa Bell's name curled black and vanished. Lydia watched without breathing. When the last ash lifted into the wind, her shoulders trembled once, hard. The company rolled west with the Platte shining on their right and danger on their trail. For 5 days Lydia traveled among the wagons as if she had been born to dust, harness, and the long complaint of wheels over dirt. Camp woke before dawn. Coffee first, then prayer, quick and low. Fires kicked apart. Children lifted half asleep from quilts. Buckles snapped. Milk hissed into pails. By first light the train was moving. 10 miles if the road turned mean. 15 if the Lord was generous. Lydia made herself useful in the one language nobody mistrusted for long: work. She patched canvas with waxed thread. She calmed a panicked milk cow by cupping its jaw and speaking to it as if fear were a thing that could be reasoned with. She took a mule's hoof and found the stone under it in half the time it took the owner to finish complaining. By the second evening she had mended a child's shoe, reset a wagon brake, and shown 3 embarrassed men how to hear the warning creak in a wheel before it became disaster. A runaway bride made some women uneasy. A woman broad of body and plain of face made others cruel in ways they would have denied if the Lord had asked them straight. Maybe the man had cause. Maybe women who run once always run. Lydia heard it all and answered none of it. She worked. Gideon watched that too. He was 39, long-boned, quiet, and weathered by grief into something harder than most men his age. He served as scout, fixer, and right hand to Captain Cade. He spoke only when speech improved a situation. His mare trusted him. Children drifted toward him. Men gave way when he decided a thing needed doing. On the third night Lydia found him greasing a hub by lantern light. "You're packing that wrong," she said. He looked up. "Am I?" She crouched beside him and took the rag from his hand. "Too much on the outer rim. It'll throw hot once the dust sticks. Here, feel this." He put his fingers where she showed him. Her hands were warm from labor, roughened, precise. "You did wagon work before Bell?" he asked. "Before Bell. Before my father got sick. Before I was old enough to know men hear a woman differently if she's holding a ledger instead of a hammer." She repacked the grease and handed the rag back. "Why trust me with those papers?" he asked. She nodded toward his mare cropping grass nearby. "Because horses shy from men before women do, and she doesn't fear you." That evening, with beans thick in the pot and buffalo chip smoke drifting low, Captain Cade asked for the whole truth. Lydia gave it plain. Her father had kept a wheelwright's yard near Florence, Nebraska. After her mother died, Lydia learned the accounts: the forge, the spoke shave, the iron tire, and the cost of mending other people's mistakes. Asa Bell arrived with a freight business, polished boots, and a manner that passed for Christian gentleness among people who had never seen cruelty smile. He bought debt notes cheap from sickness houses and collected them dear from the grieving. When Lydia found the false entries, she found her own father's yard already marked for transfer once mourning ended. "I told him I'd work 20 years before I'd marry him," she said. "What did he say?" Verity asked. Lydia stared into the fire. "He said marriage was the kinder arrangement. He said no one else was likely to take the burden off my hands." The silence after that was heavy and hot. Brother Jessup, who worried for a living, looked from Lydia to the dark beyond the fire. "And what becomes of us when he catches up? We have children here." Lydia stood before anyone else could answer. "At Fort Laramie, I leave your company," she said. "If he wants me, he can take me where witnesses stand close enough to hear me say no. I won't have families shot at because I climbed into your line." Verity opened her mouth to object, but Lydia lifted a hand. "You took me in when nobody else would even look at me. That debt is mine to honor." She walked away before pity could find her. Gideon found her later beside the wagon tongs. "Leaving won't save us if Bell wants those ledgers more than he wants you," he said. "Staying won't save you either." Lydia leaned both palms on the wagon tongue. "Do you know what it is to sit at your own wedding table and hear women say how merciful it was that a man had agreed to take you? Not love you, not choose you, take you, as if I were flour going stale on a shelf." Gideon looked out over the plain because some truths are easier heard sideways. "Being measured is a lonely way to live," he said. She turned at that. The starlight took the sharpness from her face and left only weariness. "Yes," she said, "it is." The next morning she saved Ruth Pike's youngest from being kicked when a frightened ox swung wide at a creek crossing. She took the blow herself on the hip, caught the rope, and soothed the beast down before the mother finished screaming. After that even the doubtful ones softened. By the sixth day the riders appeared again, not close enough to shoot, only close enough to remind. One of them held something white on the tip of his rifle. Veil lace. Camp went still. This is the place in a story where I always wonder what a heart can bear before it chooses one sorrow over another. So tell me this in the comments. If you had been Lydia then, would you have stepped off that trail alone to save the people who had shown you mercy? Or would you have trusted them one more day? Nobody slept well that night. At dawn the company pushed hard for the Sweetwater Cut, hoping to reach the Narrows before Bell could set himself there first. The country sharpened as they went. Cottonwoods thinned. The wind turned colder. Stone showed through the earth like old bone. He's got 6 men now, the boy gasped after draining half a cup of coffee. One wears a deputy's star when it suits him. Bell says he'll catch you at the Narrows and make an example of anybody who stands in his way. Captain Cade fed the boy and sent him south to a safer road. Then he gathered the company. The Narrows ahead pinched between bluff and river, bad ground for wagons and worse ground for a fight. To turn away cost 2 days and water. To press on meant meeting trouble where trouble wanted them. Let me go ahead alone, Lydia said. Gideon answered before Cade could. No. She faced him. He wants me and the papers. If I ride out under a white cloth, maybe he stops there long enough for the company to take the south cut. He'll clap irons on you before your horse stops breathing. Maybe. No maybe to it. Captain Cade's gaze moved between them. We do not feed our people to wolves to buy ourselves cleaner consciences, he said. Lydia's chin lifted. I am not your people. From the back of the ring Verity Snow said. Child, you put your shoulder under our wagon at the river. That settled the matter before the rest of us caught up. Something crossed Lydia's face then, quick and dangerous. Relief's deeper cousin. The look of a person hearing, against all expectation, that there is still room at the table. They went on. The storm hit just before the Narrows. Not rain first. Wind. Hard, flattening wind that drove Grit sideways and made the oxen bawl. Canvas snapped like rifle fire. Dust turned the daylight green-gray. Then the first shot cracked from the left ridge and threw gravel at the lead team. Close up, Gideon shouted. Riders poured down through dust and thunder. Asa Bell came behind them on a red roan, coat dark with grit, hat tied hard beneath his chin. Bring me my wife and my papers, he called, smooth as church varnish, and I may yet leave these saints with their stock. Lydia stood beside Verity's wagon, one hand on the brake lever. Wind tore hair loose from her bonnet. I was never your wife, she shouted back, and every paper you call yours was stolen first. Bell smiled. Say that to the law. One of his riders swung wide for the rear wagons. Another raised a rifle toward the children under canvas. The world broke fast. Men fired from behind wheels. Women dragged barrels and feed crates into a rough barricade. Mercy Flint knelt by a flour sack and loaded with the calm of somebody who believed panic was a vanity. The oxen lunged against the yokes. One mule screamed and fell. Then the rear wagon hit a washout hidden by dust. Its tongue snapped. The left wheel dropped. The whole wagon, with Jessup's sick wife and 3 children inside, tipped toward the river cut. Lydia ran. She did not look for permission. She did not look for safety. She ran straight into the worst of it and dropped to the axle as the wagon groaned over her head. Chain, she shouted. Gideon heard. He snatched a drag chain from the sideboard and went to her bent low under gunfire. Mud slicked the ground. The wagon shifted again. It won't hold, he said. Then don't ask it to. Pin the wheel. He dropped beside her. Together they worked blind and fast, chain through spoke, hook to undercarriage, wedge under rim. Rain began at last, fat and cold, making paste of the trail. A shot snapped close, and Gideon jerked back, blood running from his temple. Lydia saw it. Bell had spent months teaching her she was a burden, a thing to be moved, priced, used. Standing in the mud with a wagon on her shoulder and a wounded man beside her, she discovered the lie in full. She heaved upward with both arms and all the heavy strength of her body. The wagon rose just enough. Gideon slammed the pin home. The wheel locked. The wagon held. Bell saw it from horseback, and his contempt betrayed him. Look at her, he shouted. I offered mercy to spare her from being nobody's burden. Lydia rose from the mud, rain on her face, Gideon's blood on one sleeve. You offered a bill of sale, she said. Mercy Flint put a bullet through Bell's saddle horn. The red roan reared. Bell fought it down, cursing. Then he saw the ledger packet tucked inside the open wagon box. He spurred straight for it. Gideon tried to stand and could not. His leg was trapped under the drag chain. Bell swung one boot free of the stirrup, preparing to jump down among the papers and take back everything. Lydia snatched the packet first, ripped open the oilcloth, and flung the ledgers into the rain. Bell laughed once, thinking the storm would carry them off. It did not. The pages slapped wet into the mud around his horse. Dark figures and signatures spread in plain view. He leaped from the saddle to gather them. That was what Lydia had wanted. The broken wagon tongue still jutted beneath the chained wheel. Lydia kicked the chock loose. The wheel lurched a quarter turn. The splintered tongue smashed hard across Bell's shin. Bone cracked. He screamed and went down in the mud among his own false accounts. The last of his riders wavered. One had lost his hat, another his nerve. The fake deputy wheeled south. A third man threw down his rifle and bolted for the ridge. Bell crawled for the papers. Lydia stepped on his hand. Not cruelly, not wildly, with judgment. "Look at me now," she said. Bell did. For the first time he saw her without the discounting habits that had made him stupid. He saw the woman who understood wagons, numbers, leverage, weather, fear, and exactly how much force a lying man could withstand before the truth crushed him. Captain Cade's rifle came level. "It's done," he called. Bell, shivering in rain and pain, finally understood the arithmetic had turned against him. He let go. After that, the storm took the fight apart. One rider fled. One surrendered. The company gathered its children, its stock, and the scattered ledger pages. Gideon got halfway to his feet before the sky tilted and went black. He woke under canvas to the smell of pine salve and wet wool. Night had fallen. Rain tapped softer now. The sweet water moved beyond the wagons in a low, steady rush. Somebody sat beside him with a lamp turned low. Lydia. She had traded the ruined blue silk for one of Verity's plain brown dresses. Her cheek was bruised. Her hair hung in a loose braid over one shoulder. She was wiping dried blood from his temple with the care of someone mending cracked china. "You're alive," she said. "That appears to be the general opinion." "Bell," he asked. "Splinted, bound, and under guard. He keeps asking for a lawyer and a minister. Mercy says if he gets one, she wants the other." Gideon shut his eyes a moment in gratitude. When he opened them again, Lydia was looking at his bandaged head as if willing it to heal faster. "You should have run," he said. "Probably. Why didn't you?" She set the cloth in the basin and folded her hands together to keep them from shaking. "Because all my life, when trouble came, I was the thing people passed along. Sent to an aunt after my mother died. Sent to the back room when callers wanted prettier company. Nearly sent into marriage because debt weighed more than I did. And at the river, when your company could have handed me over clean and kept your own names out of it, you didn't." Her voice thinned but did not break. "I had not known how hungry I'd been for that." He turned one hand upward on the blanket. It was the smallest invitation. After a breath, she put her hand in his. "My wife died on the trail," he said. "Near South Pass. Labor came early. Snow was building. I kept us moving because I was afraid for everybody behind us. By the time I stopped being useful and started being wise, I had lost them both." Lydia did not rush to comfort him. She simply held his hand more firmly. "You've been punishing yourself with duty ever since," she said. He gave a rough laugh. "Is it that plain? To somebody who knows how people hide pain inside labor?" "Yes." He studied her in the lamplight, the strong wrists, the tired eyes, the face every foolish man in Florence had looked past in search of something easier. "You don't look like trouble to me," he said softly. "You look like someone who got left standing in it." Her breath caught. One tear slid down and fell onto their joined hands. "That may be the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me," she whispered. They spoke quietly after that. Her mother hiding cloves in flour sacks so winter bread could still surprise a house. His wife laughing in her sleep. Lydia's secret wish for a porch wide enough for 2 evening chairs. Gideon's wish to stop living as if roads were all he deserved. At length he said, "The place that keeps you ought to do it because it knows your worth, not because it needs your strength to survive." If this part of the story is reaching into something tender in you, then you are exactly who we tell these stories for. A like and a subscribe tell us to keep making room for the overlooked, the faithful, and the people who have had to survive more than they should have. They brought Asa Bell into Fort Bridger under guard with the ledger pages dried between sheets of cloth and weighted flat by cooking pans. That was where Lydia's truest weapon finally came into view: numbers. Bell had spent years assuming nobody would ever ask a woman like Lydia Quill to speak in a room where law sat listening. He had mistaken invisibility for ignorance. The clerk laid out the ledgers. Captain Cade provided witnesses. The freight boy from the trail reappeared. A teamster knew his mule contract had been altered after he signed. Then Lydia stepped forward and walked the clerk through every lie. She knew Bell's handwriting the way a tracker knows spore. She knew where sums had been scraped and written again. She knew which pages were copied fair after the original books disappeared. Bell tried outrage, then pity, then scripture. None of it held, because the thing he had mocked most in her became the blade that opened him. He had called her too much woman, too much size, too much stubbornness, too much plainness for any decent future. But her patience, her memory, her refusal to be hurried, and her years of being overlooked at the edge of men's dealings had made her dangerous in the one-way corruption never plans for. She had been listening. By the time the company moved on toward the valley, riders were already carrying word east. Bell's notes were frozen, his holdings questioned. One partner denied him, then another. A bank called in what it was owed. By the time the Wasatch stood blue against the western light, Asa Bell was a man in irons with a broken leg, a ruined reputation, and no respectable face willing to nod his way. Lydia did not watch when they let him off. She was standing beside a wagon teaching Hyrum Cade how to hear the difference between a hungry axle and a cracked one. "Miss Lydia," the boy asked, solemn as a judge, "are you staying with us now?" She looked over the valley where cabins rose from hard earth, smoke lifted clean in the dry air, and people who had nearly died together were beginning the slow work of belonging somewhere. Then she looked at Gideon. He stood with a healing leg and a crutch he disliked, watching her with no claim in his face. No demand, no bargain, just room. "If they'll have me," she said. Verity's snow snorted from the cook fire. "Child, we had you from the river. You're only late learning it." Lydia helped raise a wheel shop from salvaged timber and the bones of wagons that had carried families farther than anyone thought possible. Men brought her hubs to fit and spoke to her with the careful respect usually reserved for preachers and gunsmiths. Women came too, often with repairs, sometimes with stories. When Gideon finally asked if she would walk with him beyond the last cabin at sunset, he asked like an honest man. "If you say no, I'll still thank God you came west," he said. Lydia looked at him, then at the mountains, then down at her own rough, scarred hands. "I have had enough of being taken," she said. "I know. Good. Then you may try choosing me." He did. Their wedding in the valley was small, warm, and free of every kind of bargain. Verity baked. Mercy cried and denied it. Owen nearly split with importance carrying the ring. Captain Cade wore his best coat and pretended not to understand why everybody kept smiling at him. When Gideon took Lydia's hand, there was no rescue in it, no pity, no mercy dressed up as love. Only recognition. Only the clean dignity of being seen true and wanted anyway. That first winter the snow came heavy and early. It buried old ruts, fence posts, and the last visible scars of the trail. Back east, Bell's holdings were broken apart in court. 2 widows recovered their land. A freighter got back his teams. In Florence they said his name only when warning young men what greed looked like in a church coat. Years later, travelers stopping at the Hale Wheel shop would see a broad-shouldered woman laying her ear to a wagon hub as if listening to a confession, and a quiet man bringing her coffee before dawn without being asked. If somebody remarked that they made an odd pair, Lydia would smile and say, "Odd things hold best when they are made honest." Gideon would answer, "Some houses are built from timber. Ours was built from the day nobody handed you back." And on summer evenings, with the porch lamp gold against the dark and the mountains holding the last of the sun, they would sit shoulder to shoulder while the valley settled around them, and the whole hard road behind them would look no bigger than a ribbon of dust disappearing into the peace. Next time, we'll tell the story of a deaf woman sent to a remote cattle ranch because her brothers were ashamed of her silence, and the scarred rancher who learned her language before he ever touched her hand.